Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. This is going to be the Data API Builder Community Stand-Up. This is the month of September. Yeah, wow. The year is passing quickly. A lot of things are happening on the Data API Builder side. One of the things that I want to bring your attention to is that there is a new release that I want to walk through some of the details. So let me pull that up and walk you through it. The main point of this, there are 3 releases between now and, but there are going to be 3 releases after GA. So in May, we had our first release, or second release, and this is going to be the third. So I'm about to talk through the second. Each one has a specific agenda, and the primary agenda of all 3 is to address as many issues as possible that are in the backlog on the repository. So if you're wondering what those items are, it's easy to find. You can go to the repository and you can walk through the issues yourself. What's important about that is, and so right here are the issues, by the way, and you can filter those and see the things that are going on. And that's important because we want to make sure that, especially right now in this early moment of GA for Data API Builder, that we give the best experience possible to you, the developer. So hopefully you'll start to see increased stability and some sort of features around the edge that allow for some use cases that we anticipated but didn't necessarily know would come up this quickly. And so hopefully you'll feel that, you'll be able to sense and take advantage of those as well. So let me walk through 1.2.10. And so 1.2.10 is the current release. So if you go into the .NET tool and you upgrade, you'll get 1.2.10. And there's a handful of things I want to point out, and a lot of them are around just making Data API Builder more reliable. So the first one I really want to show just through the features here is that now we have the ability to limit the results being returned. And so one of the first things that you'll be able to do inside the configuration is be able to limit the number of rows that are returned. So we already paginate and say that there is a limit of 100 rows at a time. However, a developer could easily go in and add to their query the request to get first. So they could say first 200, and they could get back twice as many records as the limit of the original page. Pagination, by the way, still kicks in and still goes the same. However, they could also say first 100,000. Now, that is a big deal because if this happens to be a large payload, it could be very problematic to the performance of your container. They could also say first 1 million. And now all of a sudden, they've created a situation potentially that could cause the engine to crash or cause the experience of other users using the system to have really bad experiences. So we've added the ability for you to go in and limit the max size that is returnable. And so what happens is you can already change the default page size. If you don't like 100, you can set it to 200. You can set it to 50. Now we also have a limit to what can be used under first to make sure that the maximum result size, result in row count is limited. But we also now have added the max response size in megabytes. So this is important because some data types allow you to put in entire documents. So for example, if you use the text data type in SQL, there's a 2 gigabyte limit as far as what you can put into that data source or into that column. That's not a big deal when it comes to the database, but it's a big deal when it comes to the API, because what if you had 2 of those columns? What if you had 3? And then what happens if you ask for 100,000 of those rows? And so now all of a sudden, the number of rows isn't as important as the number of megabytes being streamed through the system. So now as it's streaming through, we measure how large it is. And if it hits the limit, then we will we'll return the appropriate error. So those are the 3 starting points that are really important for you to know, that this is how we are going to make it so that Data API Builder deployed for you is more and more stable in the way that you want it to be, because we know that there are a lot of things that you're wanting to do. Some developers are going to use it in a very straightforward way, and this won't even be an issue for them. But there are others that have massive data or massive data sets that want to be able to ensure the quality of their service. One other thing, so this is going to be a really good stand-up, partly because we're going to be talking about Postgres and the integration of Postgres going forward. One of the things that we did, as a matter of fact, and I think it's worth talking about just to you guys who love Data API Builder, and that is the application name, which is a portion of the connection string that is passed to the server, has already been updated for SQL Server to allow us to be able to see DAB logins, right? So this allows us to be able to see usage. It doesn't provide any information, but it does allow us to at least see the login with a DAB login. The reason that's valuable is that telemetry allows us to justify the engineering investment so we can add more to DAB. With this release, we've added the same thing to Postgres to make it so that Postgres's application name value is also set. Now, if you're the type of developer that adds your own custom value to application name, we detect that and we don't override it. However, if you don't use a custom value in there, then we get to use it, right? So that's really great because it allows us, because remember, this is all open source, and you can use the code as you like, and we don't always know how much is being used. So this at least gives us a hint. It's not really telling us how many users there are, but at least gives us a hint and sort of, we refer to this as it gives us an indicator of use. The one other thing that's at least worth pointing out, and I just forgot, and I want to point it out, is we have these limitations that we set as around megabytes, the number of rows that are returned, the size of the page, but also the depth of the GraphQL query. So the fact that you can nest GraphQL queries is one of the best features of GraphQL. However, the depth as it gets deeper makes it more and more sophisticated, more and more complex, and potentially really difficult for your database to be able to deliver on the expectations. So what we've done is allowed for you, the developer, to go in and set a depth limit. So you can say they can only go 10, they can only go 5, they can only go 4 levels deep, whatever is right for you and your organization. So I don't know how your application is written. I don't know what your application needs. That's the reason everything is configurable. So you can go in and set the GraphQL depth limit. If you're a REST user and you're not using GraphQL, then no problem. This doesn't apply to you. All right, so those are the main pieces. So hopefully what you're getting out of this is we're not really releasing major features in these next few versions, these first 3 major releases. Instead, we're doing all of this stability enhancement to make sure that Data API Builder is the perfect tool for your toolbox for you to be able to add to your solution. Okay, that's everything about the release that I want to talk about. It's ready to go. You guys can go see the MCR container image has been updated, so that will be refreshed as well. If you're using the latest image, you'll get the latest version as well. So just look for 1.2.10. One last thing that I want to just point out is if you go to the repository, one of the parts of the repository here at the top of the README is the ability to sign up for our community. So if you haven't already done that, do that quickly, because later this week I'm going to send out our roadmap, and in that roadmap, which will be more in the shape of a survey, will allow you to help us prioritize the next set of features that we do add. And so it's a big deal that we are thinking about what is it that we're going to invest in, but more importantly, what is it we're going to invest in that matters to you, our community. So if you haven't already signed up, hundreds of you already have. If you haven't already signed up, go ahead and sign up now. You'll be part of our roadmap planning. And as we move into, and you may already know this, Microsoft works as in a half-year semester sort of environment. And so our next semester is about to start, and we're doing planning for that. And so as that planning moves forward, we'll use the results of this survey to give us direction on what features get prioritized. So sign up for the community and we're good to go. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm glad that you're here. So as I said earlier, we're going to be talking primarily about Postgres and the implementation of Postgres in Data API Builder. Right now, we support 5 backend data sources. We support SQL Server, we support Cosmos DB, we support SQL Server Data Warehouse, we support MySQL, and we support PostgreSQL. And on that team, Varun is the product manager, and he's here with me today. He's going to walk through sort of the experience that you as a developer will have, both from the perspective of being familiar with Postgres, and then also from the perspective of getting to know how Postgres works, especially in Azure, where it's a pretty compelling story. And so let me go ahead and bring Varun on. And hi, Varun, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jerry.
All
Can
right,
you hear
great.
me?
Sure can perfectly. Okay, so let me start first before you get into Postgres. Tell us who you are, and then tell us what you're going to show us.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of the DAB. I've been following DAB, Jerry, for quite some time, and I have an opportunity to present DAB at many different forums. So happy to be here. Well, my name is Varun. I'm a product manager with Azure Database for Postgres team at Microsoft. Uh, and then we build, this managed service for Azure Postgres, which is 100% based on the community Postgres. It's not a fork. Uh,
Hmm,
so if you worked on a relational database like SQL or Oracle, you may have also heard about Postgres. And then if you worked on Postgres, you may have used Postgres, on your laptop or on a VM, maybe deploying it on Azure or some other public cloud. What we do is that we build an awesome managed service of Postgres so that you can do away with all the mundane work of backups and setting up high availability and doing setups and all those things, and you just concentrate on building the awesome applications using these tools like dab. And that's what, and we run, we do the hard work behind.
hmm.
And then I'm happy to hear to show, some of the work that we are doing, our flagship product, which is the flexible server. So yeah.
Terrific. All right. Well, let me you share your screen, and I'll bring you on board here. And I'll just make this point while you're getting ready that one of the important parts of Data API Builder is that the experience across different databases is in parity. And so what that means is that if you're interacting with the graph experience that DAB gives you, or if you're interacting with the REST endpoints, regardless of if you're using Postgres, MySQL, or SQL Server, the experience is exactly the same, which means it's nice and rich, and you don't have these compromises depending on the backend store. There are differences between the databases, no doubt about it, but for the most part, one of the best parts of Data API Builder is it gives you this unified experience where you don't really even know what the backend data source is. But there are advantages to each, and so Varun will walk us through really how you kind of get started and what it all means. Varun, I'll go ahead and stop talking here and let you take the stage.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jerry. First of all, it's a great summary. I was listening in the backstage, so many releases. In fact, this morning, the first thing I did, woke up, was to upgrade the DApp version so that whatever demo, I show is on the latest version. So, thanks for all your team does. Again, so how we've kept, this part of my discussion is that I'm going to show you, talk about the Azure database for Postgres. And then I'm going to quickly show you how easy it is set up, Azure database for Postgres flexible server instance and, get started. And one of the ways when I say get started is to get start, build an app. And a simple way we are in a DApp session is how about have a schema? How about just quickly build, start a DApp container and then connect to our schema and then expose the schema as an API. So that's the part. Lot to cover. We'll go quick, but I'll be more than happy, to take all the, questions in the comments. So again, my name is Varun. The talk is about, everything that we do with Postgres at Microsoft. I love to blog. I'm also on Twitter. Now, Postgres is the world's most advanced open source relational database, and this is something that we don't say. It's pretty much there all over. So this is the most recent Stack Overflow developer survey. I think it's as recent as 3 weeks, before the Stack Overflow launched it, and then you can clearly see quite ahead with some of the other well-known database. Now, again, high regards. Every database is to serves a purpose. Is just that the momentum we are seeing with the overall community that builds Postgres, and the amount of effort which people are putting, bringing the latest features such as AI into the Postgres. It's just very humbling to see Postgres doing this good. Uh, by Postgres, it's like it's open source. It's been around for 3 or 4 decades. Uh, it's very extensible as compared to some of the proprietary database engine, which where the features are available with every release. In Postgres, the community decides, what to keep within the core engine. So that's one part of it. And then some of the other goodness, let's say the capabilities with JSON, say the capabilities with geospatial, and most recently now with the vector data and the AI compatibility, the AI extensions. All these things are available with the plugins or what we call extensions, more generically. So it's very extensible. There's a lot of tooling around it, like Dab is an awesome tool, that works with Postgres, and there are many other similar tools, like if you may have heard of Postgres, things like that. It's battle tested, it's feature rich. We'll talk about some of those things. But this is interesting. Like when you think about Microsoft or databases at Microsoft, Postgres probably isn't the first one. What do you think? Like you probably think of SQL Server, or you may now even think of uh, Cosmos, which is our flagship NoSQL database. But we do a lot of Postgres within Microsoft. Uh, and then our investment, with Postgres and with the open source community is not just limited that we have, a managed service Postgres. We actually have a whole team of what you call committers within Postgres, and we do open source contribution. So some of the work that my team does, it's not just limited to the goodness that we build in the managed service Postgres. It actually goes back to the Postgres engine. So if in case you just download the plain vanilla Postgres, from the cloud and run it in your laptop or on your VM, uh, you still get benefit from the work which is done by some of our team members. So you may want to use managed service, but you may just want to download Postgres and just play around and do your own project. So this is a link to the blog. It's written by one of my colleagues, Claire Giordano. It's an awesome post, and it just covers everything that we do with Postgres. I'll appreciate, I'll leave the link over here in the about this blog. Uh, and then I'll just be a little quick with these slides, but these are some highlights of the open source the contribution. We have a bunch of committers all over the globe. I think even this list is slightly dated, like we have more committers. Uh, and then there are 60 patches committed in last 12 months, and I think this is only updated until March. So I bet this number is much higher right now as we are preparing for Postgres 17 launch. This is some high-level contribution, like most significant one being the pgstat.io. And then again, like as I say, it's not just limited to our contribution to the code or our managed service. It's like we our team is just wants to talk about Postgres at every possible place and build the community. So we do conference sponsorship, we do talks. I'm doing one such talk right now. We run our own podcast, which is Talking Postgres, and then we have our own online the entire Postgres conference. The Poset where you can participate and just go through all the Postgres sessions. Okay, so now about our managed service. So that's a managed service. Now, when we build this managed service, we think about two very definite user personas, one being enterprises, one being developers. So what does enterprise want? What does developer wants? And enterprise wants basically security, high availability, disaster recovery, scalability, and manageability. Now, all these are required so that you can run a very predictable enterprise class database system on any database. And all these things, come built in. So this is a high-level graphic which shows all the capabilities that we have. So now, if you see that our Postgres already has the intro ID. That you can do the AD login. It just supports private endpoint and virtual networks. There's data encryption, which is already built in. Defender is our flagship offering for security across all Azure services, and we have 100% integration with Defender. We offer high availability built-in across availability zone within availability zone. We offer GeoDR. I think Azure has some 200 plus regions. Jerry, you may have a better number, and then we have GeoDR, so you can pretty much have instances across any regions to secure yourself again a region-specific failure. High performance comes built in. Azure Policy comes built in, and Azure Advisor, which is based upon the AI and ML-based recommendations, everything is built in. Yeah, this is some of quick features from an enterprise. Again, this is a developer friendly session, so I'll be more inclined towards talking on the dev tools. But this is just comparison of some of the recent advancement that we've done with our service. Uh, I will skip to the developer part of the session. So okay, well, the next persona, which is very important for us, is that what does developer want? So again, there could be many different facets of it. Like this is what we figure out: the developer love cost effectiveness. Like they just want something nimble to get started, and they want to scale from there. They want latest version in case of Postgres. So Postgres has this very definite release cycle. There's a new major version which gets launched every year. So we are almost at the cusp of Postgres 17, which will be launched in next 3 to 4 weeks. Uh, they are a minor version, so versions are very important. And then right now the AI is pretty much the hype in the industry, and we just want and Postgres is at the forefront of it because Postgres has been supporting the vector kind of data type, which is the foundational for AI workloads. And these are the top things that developer wants. So, like again, from a cost-effective standpoint, all these things are available. You can pretty much get started. Like 12-month free trial is there. You have reserve instances. You can build up instances in any part of geography, depending upon whatever is more economical for you. Uh, but today we will talk about the data API builder. So this is a little graphic which I think I borrowed, Jerry, from one of your slides. So what is data API builder? I believe most of us in this call in some capacity were already aware, but let's do a quick recap. So if you have a site, or if you have an application which you love to interact with some sort of an API, and you use some of an API managers, uh, the gap that this team observed was that you have these databases and relational database system, and relational database natively don't understand API. So you write SQL queries and SQL query, and you get data back into SQL queries. So now if your application is talking in terms of an API, then you have to write like this huge flux of code, multiple lines of code to convert your data calls into APIs. And what DAP does is, it just simplifies the whole thing with a simple configuration file. It just understands your schema, abstracts it, and then you just automatically get these APIs. And you just don't get REST, but you also get the GraphQL API. So we'll see some of this is in action, but this is a very high level workflow of DAP. So if you are a developer, uh, and then you have a database, basically all you do is use a dab init command. You create a JSON file, and once the JSON file is completely created, then you can simply do a dap start command. It will fire up the runtime engine, and then once the runtime engine is available, then you automatically get these GraphQL and REST endpoints. Jerry, do we have any questions? Otherwise, I can switch to a little bit of the demo over here. Yeah. Okay, I guess there are no questions, so I'm going to do the demo. So I have for this the purpose of this discussion, I already have spin up. So this is how the Azure database for Postgres screens look like. So if you're starting new, all you need to do is like probably just search for Azure, maybe just search for Postgres. The So when you search for Postgres, there are multiple offerings that shows up. We have multiple offerings, but I'll say that our flagship offering is Azure Database for Postgres Flexible Server, which is the which is the single node offering. So if you start from here, you can very easily create a new database. So I'm going to go through some slides and show you how easy it's a great database experience look like. So and whatever I'm showing
Hey,
is with.
Varun.
Go
Hey,
ahead, Jerry.
hit Control plus plus a couple of times so it's a little bit
Oh,
bigger.
for sure, for sure. That's a good, yeah. Is that okay, Jerry, now?
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. So there's a bunch of these tabs. I'm showing the UI part of it, but however, you can do any of these things with the CLI. You can do it. There's a Terraform integration. So if you want to deploy 500 or 1,000 instances, those all things are available. So you got to start with a subscription, and then you start with a resource group or whatever is your resource group name. So in this particular case, I'll just put my own resource group, and you start with a server name. So you can just say pgflex. It's just, whatever is the field. So I'm just going to put 9/4/2024 today. And then this is these are the regions, where you can deploy. So multiple regions are there. Uh, it's clearly we are almost there in most of the regions. Just in case if you happen to be in a region where you don't see a service, uh, please feel free to hit us up. Now, this is where it gets interesting, that you can multiple versions all the way from 11 until 16, though I would highly recommend to not use 11 and start with the higher versions. And very soon we'll have 17 available. Uh, you can choose a different workload types, development, production. I'm going to deliberately click on the configure server part to show you some of the compute configuration. So you have multiple instance types, starting with the burstable, which allows you a lot of saving just in case you are not really sure of the predictable workload. Sometimes you have a workload with spikes at a different time and you don't want to commit that much money on the compute. I think burstable is a great place. Otherwise, you can always start with a general purpose or memory optimized. And even when you start with the general purpose or memory optimized, you have so many options. So you can possibly start with the smallest versions, and you can also pick up the smallest available storage which is there, and then you can see how much is your costing. So there is a cost calculator already built in. You can disable high availability just in case you don't want to have this additional cost, and that's completely doable. Backups come built in, uh, and there are a bunch of other networking and security options. To
Hmm.
save this time, I've already created an instance, and once you've created an instance, this is how your screen looks like. So you get everything tabbed, all the key functionalities that you can think about in terms of, the main configuration, the main settings like server parameters, or you want to set up replications or maintenance, come down to security, and you have all the security tools available. Monitoring, for which is one of my PM area, you get a lot of monitoring built in. So even if you go to the home page, you will see a lot of monitoring tabs, and I think we have over 80 matrix time series matrix, and you have logs, and all these things are available. Uh, Given we want to just play around with the DAB, the one way to get started is to just quickly connect. Once you've created an instance, you want to simply connect. uh, pgadmin is a tool. Like if you've been using SQL, you use Management Studio the same way. If you use Postgres, I think the most popular tool is pgadmin. Otherwise, you can always connect using the PC, using the command line. So I have a command line argument over here. So let's see if I have not lost. Okay. So I can, connect to the command line, and I can just list everything, my tables. Now, over here, if you see, I have a bunch of these tables which are there, books, authors. I can just do select asterisks from books, and I see that there is some data which is available in the books, some 21 rows. Now, let's say the business case that we are trying to solve over here is that ours is a mobile application or a web application, and natively it understands the APIs, and I just want to quickly see that how I can, have query this kind of a data using an API. So an easy way of doing this is via DAB. So how easy, we all know how easy DAB, works with SQL or maybe Cosmos, and this session will show, it's just the same experience with Postgres. So I'll fire up the VS Code. I don't have a container, but I have I'm just running it on my VS Code for the simplicity of it. So I'm running on the latest version, so maybe I can just show the DAB version over here with that Jerry was talking. So I think I'm running on 1.2.10, which happens, which is one Jerry was mentioning in the morning. If you're not, there is a very simple command you can run. Now, once I start this, the next thing that I want to do is configure, a JSON file, which I do with the DAB in it. So I already have a JSON file, so maybe I can just drop this JSON file and configure a new one. So if the demo gods are on my side, I'm going to stop the running engine, just copy the dab init command, CLS. so cool. It just creates a new JSON file, and
Hmm.
I can pretty much read the file. It has all the GraphQL and API, and I'm just using what you call the bare bone version, which just comes with everything. You can select, you can only have, a REST endpoint, and you can only have the GraphQL endpoint. But I'm just using a development mode, which by default gives me both these things. And once I did this, I know, remember, let's go back. We have bunch of tables, so books, authors, and books underscore author. And I'm going to just add, these tables over here to my JSON file. So I'm going to use that add command. So I've just added books. I'm going to add authors and books and authors. And then if you go back to the JSON, now you can see the JSON file is updated and it has created those entry blocks, for those things. With that being done, I think rest of it should be pretty straightforward. All I need to do is just do a dap start pointing to my JSON file. So I just do dap start. I do my little prayer for the demo gods over here. I think it should be started. And let's see, let's fire up, let's fire up. So I think I've already opened, but let's start something fresh over here. So I'm going to hit the endpoint and I say, oh, okay, well, my endpoint is healthy. So that's the first good sign. So now if I want to start querying this endpoint API, and remember, one of my table is books. So I'm going to, just see, I want to query the books record. So if I query books over here, I get 21 rows, prelude, forward, all 21 rows. But what can I query them over here from the API? Well, it just works. I get all the records. I think I'm using a JSON formatter extension for Chrome, so everything is nicely formatted JSON, and it looks pretty cool. So that's how simple it is. And then if you are someone like if you're good in this JSON query language, then you can just do a lot of things like order by filter. For somebody who is slightly naive, I love to use some sort of a UI tool. So I'm going to show you the Swagger UI, which the REST endpoint comes built in. So let's pick up the Swagger endpoint. So let's see. Okay. So this fires up Swagger. So I'm connected to the REST endpoint, and it's picking up everything: books, author, and books and authors. And let's say I just want to again get everything. So and I'll execute the command, and I just get all the records, which I query. So you can pretty much do anything. You can over here give a specific value. You can get a book with a specific ID. So all those things are possible.
Now,
Now,
Varun, we have a question, and I can answer this question from the SQL Server side, and I'd
mhm,
like for you to answer it for the um, Postgres side. So the question is from Jim. He's asking one of the things is, does DAB support claims-based authorization? So there's a couple of considerations around. The first answer is yes, and there's a couple of considerations. The first one is where you want those claims to be used. So for example, let me swap just for a second
for sure.
to my screen. So this is the documentation for DAB. This is aka.ms/docs or /dab/docs, right? That's a quick way to get to it. And so I jumped down to the authentication portion of the configuration file. And so this is the first place that you can use the claims inside Data API Builder. And it allows you basically to create policies on individual entities. And so, for example, this is the layout inside JSON. So I have an entity, and let's say this is your users table. And in the permissions property, you can go down and set a policy for an individual role, right? So that's an individual role you're setting this for. And this is going to be either executed before it is sent to the database, or it is going to be appended to the where clause as a brand new predicate with an and in between. Let me show you what I mean. I can go down and I can say, for example, the item is the the order ID is equal to, say, that's 2000, right? And so there you can see that the predicate is being set to be table.order ID equals 2000. That gets appended as a predicate. This is not claims. This is interacting with the row item. However, not only do we have the item, but we also have the claims too. And so I can say very similarly, claims dot, and I can start interacting with the claim, or I can start interacting with the combination of the claim and the item. So if you want to make sure that the user ID matches the owner ID inside your table, or if you want to make sure that the one of your claim values is greater than a certain value or is in some sort of a range, you can do that as well. So that's the first place that you can use claims that are received from a JOT token inside Data API Builder. The other place you can do it is in let's see, database specific features will be where we talk about it. And this is SQL Server. And so let me just talk about that for a second. We have the idea of session context. And session context allows me to take the claims and pass them to the database so that you can interact with the claims through inside a stored procedure. And so you can ask for them as a session variable that's been set automatically for you. So by default, this session context is set to false in Data API Builder, but you can set it to true. And as soon as you do, we basically take all of the information here that is represented inside your token, and we pass it so that you can see, and here's an example where you can use one of the built-in stored procedures of spset or spget session context and read a value or write a value back to it. So it's nothing unique inside SQL Server that we've created. This is just an ability that's already there. We're taking the claims and setting them inside the session context. All right, Varun, that's the first is just to be able to use it generally inside the policies of Data API Builder and then inside the session context of SQL Server. If I were a developer for Postgres, what are my options?
Yeah, no, similar. Quite honestly, Jerry, even I haven't tried. My idea of the presentation was to start with something really basic, which is like just quickly get started. I have a bunch of tables, I have DAB, and I just want to expose everything. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, all those things. Like again, Jerry, what specific question was for the Postgres part?
Oh, we were just talking about what the capability of using claims. So I definitely, when I described using claims as a policy inside the data API Builder configuration, that
Hmm.
is universal across all databases,
Correct.
including
Yeah.
Postgres, of course.
Correct.
All
Yeah.
right.
Correct. I just want to show the other part. Like while Jerry was explaining, I was just kind of testing my own,
Ah,
skills with coding with the API. So if you want to do a something very simple like order by, then you can just simply do something like books. Like books by default gives me all the books in some default order. But if you do a question mark dollar order by year, and then you just get order by. So the point I'm trying to make is that like the API language, there is a particular dialect. It understands almost everything. It's very sophisticated, so most of the things that you can achieve by doing a select query over here is something that you can achieve with an API. However, this is just one implementation that we've discussed so far, which is the REST endpoint implementation. Now, there's another very powerful implementation of querying, which is the GraphQL implementation. And that automatically also gives you the GraphQL endpoints. So if you want to hit the GraphQL endpoint, you simply start with, you again hit the 501 local, which is on my machine. It could be different on your machine, but you have to hit the slash GraphQL. So if you slash GraphQL will, I think, give you this banana cake pop implementation.
that's right.
Yep. And then it just, again, all the three tables that we have, which are author, books and author, they are all available as the schema. Now, GraphQL gets more sophisticated. There are queries and then there are mutations. I want to get started with something really simple, and I'm putting myself a little vulnerable over here. I'm not a GraphQL expert, but how easy it is. So let's say I just want to query all the books items, so I can just select item. It automatically builds this kind of query for me, and if I run it, it just gives me all the data. Now, I think
Hmm.
mutations, Jerry, are the one where you can go and you can kind of, update a record or delete a record or do things like what we typically call DML in databases.
That's right.
So yeah, so that's the pretty easier part of doing this, with DAB on with Postgres. Now, you might ask a question, that, oh yeah, like this is great. I have in past used something like Postgres, which is again a very awesome tool, for doing these capabilities. And how is DAB different from doing this? Like, why should I switch from using not using Postgres and switch using DAB? Well, it just 100% depends upon the scenario. Uh, there are a couple of things which we see on the based workloads. One is obviously the nativity with the Azure platform. So, DAB is built in mind, keeping all the Azure goodness around it. So there is automatic intra-ID authentication that is available. The second thing, if you compare between DAB and some of the other tool like Postgres, is the GraphQL implementation. Like, I think Postgres just gives us the REST endpoint, whereas DAB just gives us along with the REST, it also gives us the GraphQL endpoint. I bet, Jerry, you have a couple of more nuances to tell, how does the DApp shines, but I believe these two things alone, are big,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
You're right. In fact, let me keep thinking about this. So if you're using, and let me pull it up here. We're certainly not bothered by the fact that there are there are databases that or there are tools similar to Data API Builder. And so let me switch this tab. So Postgres, honestly, is a pretty nice tool. If you have Postgres and you're wanting to expose a REST endpoint, you may have already considered or may already be using Postgres, and it's really good. And it's actually one of the primary maintainers of Postgres works here at Microsoft, and so it's certainly not something that I'm going to say, this is a terrible idea, because that's not that way at all. However, here's the idea: as we start thinking about our industry moving forward, and we start seeing the development of newer, more modern APIs, you start seeing applications that start adopting GraphQL as an endpoint. So there's a problem with that, in that if you have REST endpoints today, you already know how easy they are to use. And if you have used GraphQL, you know it's not as easy as REST. And so what you really want to do is maintain the simplicity and maintain the ease of REST that you're already using today, but also dabble with and slowly start to adopt the capabilities of GraphQL. And so that's where Data API Builder is a little bit different. We're not just a REST endpoint and we're not just a GraphQL endpoint. We're both at the same time, which sort of gives you the ability to decide not just which one you're going to use, but how much of each one you're going to use as well. So if you're thinking about a migration to one technology or another, but you know that's going to be a gradual migration, then you can go ahead and start thinking about Data API Builder as a way to implement and make that work for you. One other consideration is another type of migration that you might be using is going, let's say, from SQL Server to Postgres. You and your company have decided that that's the direction you're going to go. Data API Builder, because it supports multiple backend data sources, allows you to go ahead and build out your API and then swap the backend data source. The other direction works too. If you're going from Postgres and you're going to go become a SQL shop, then you can go ahead and build your API using Data API Builder on top of Postgres. And then as you start making that transition, you can make that transition gradually so that you let Data API Builder query both of those databases at the same time, or you start making it so that it completely locks over to, say, Postgres from SQL. And when you do that, by the way, your API stays the same. Your versioning around your API, the queries, and all of your endpoints look exactly the same to your user. So Postgres, it's a terrific tool. It is certainly not the same as Data API Builder. Data API Builder is really trying to give you this enterprise capable, feature rich set of endpoints with all the choices you can imagine without having to cause any sort of like compromise by your team or your company. So thanks, Varun. I mean, this question comes up a lot, especially when we're talking about Postgres. And the takeaway is Postgres is great, but it depends on what you're trying to do or what the future of your company is kind of going toward.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then if you allow me a minute, Jerry, I just want to leave, with the final slide that I want to present here. So if one thing you want to screenshot, though this I bet this slides will be available in some capacity online, but if this is a good screenshot, this is all the short links to get started very easily with Postgres. I would highly recommend to get started with a free account if you haven't used Azure Postgres earlier. And then there's links to our homepage, our docs, our blog. We are always replying or reaching out to the customers on Twitter and LinkedIn. And then so that's our email ID, and we do have a feedback forum. So if you find anything with DAB, with anything else that you've been trying and it's not working, you can always hit us up, send us an email, or leave us at the feedback forum. The point is that just like SQL, just like Cosmos, Postgres is Microsoft is really invested in open source, and Microsoft is really invested in Postgres, and which is the reason why, even if not just with the Postgres team, but teams like DAB or other tooling teams, when they build tools, they always keep in mind the tools are holistic, and they just don't work with one or two databases, and they work with most of the databases. The cool part is the work the DAB is doing, besides the goodness or besides the nativity with Azure Postgres, I think it just works for any Postgres, or so if you're using Postgres from a different cloud provider, you're welcome. If you're using Postgres downloaded from internet and you're using it on your own machine, you're completely good. uh, if you're using Azure Postgres, like that's even better. So yeah, yeah. With that, yeah, these are the good links, and happy that you took all this time to listen to this talk and made yourself aware about the Azure Postgres. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Varun. You made a great point that I sometimes forget to make, and that's that DAB is not just for the cloud, it's for on-prem as well. And so not only can you point to multiple data sources, you can point to those data sources in, on-prem, in Azure, AWS. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Data API Builder still is a free open source tool, and it doesn't require any type of like Azure usage or anything like that. That's the reason we built it, was really to kind of meet the need of developers kind of where they are. Sometimes developers don't have the option to make significant changes to their topography and how things are laid out in their solutions. And so we also know that you have to repeat the same CRUD code over and over again when you're building an API. And so that's where Data API Builder kind of steps in. I just want to leave with one quick little note. So I'm back at the repository, and I just want to say we really are about to go through a major effort of prioritizing our backlog. So please sign up. Please join our community. We'll be sending out this community newsletter here soon so that you can help us prioritize things, and we can start to understand what the needs of the community are as well. So many of you I've met at different conferences and different user groups that I've been at, and it's been really neat just to see just the thousands of lines of code we've been able to save, just developers and companies. And we've only been GA since May. And so Data API Builder has really been a successful effort on our side, and we're really excited to see what comes next as well.
I,
Varun,
I
go ahead.
I would just want to add, Jerry, is that I will really encourage the community that as you use DAM, like especially with like SQL has been there quite for some time around, and with Postgres we are still doing a lot of development. As you start using DAB and you connect with the database like Postgres, again, any database on-prem or Azure Postgres, if you find scenarios which are not working or which are like half baked, feel free. This is how we improve or mature the product. Jerry, yeah, again, like Jerry is showing, how you can quickly open a new issue, and then as you can see, it's very diverse. Like people just quickly respond. So just open a lot of issues over here, and that's how we improve the product. Yeah.
Nice. That's exactly right. We absolutely go through the issues list all the time, prioritize things, and add to our backlog. And so in these last few versions, we've been really focusing on burning down that issues list. And I think as we move forward in the next handful of what we're planning in the next handful of versions, it's really exciting what's coming along as well. So Varun, thanks for taking the time, being with us, talking to the community, and showing them For those who already knew Postgres, this is a breath of fresh air to know that everything works the way that they want it to work. And at the same time, those who may not know, this is really informational because now they realize they can go into Azure and have a first-class database experience using Postgres, especially if they are wanting to use Postgres and they know it already, or their company is just mandating it. Whatever the reason, it's nice to know that now they can have the high availability and performance they would expect from an enterprise database.
For sure, and thanks for having me, Jerry. And happy to be here and happy to come back again and talk about the newer developments here.
Nice. Thanks, Varun. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again.
Thank you.